In the 19th century, things were not very good for individuals with emotional disabilities. Whether you were a child or an adult, you were not always treated humanely. There was some literature during that period, but it did not really deal with treatment or therapy, but more just with classification and descriptions. The 20th century was a little brighter for individuals with emotional disabilities, particularly children. It was during this century that we saw our first special education teacher training programs, and we saw our first child psychiatric hospitals. It was also during this time period that Kanner identified autism. Later in this same century, we saw the development of the Council for Children with Behavioral Disorders and the National Society for Autism, which is now the Autism Society of America, was founded. Conceptual models were developed, and some interventions that are still popular today were put into practice. For example, behavior modification, which is now known as applied behavior analysis. Current issues impacting the education of individuals with emotional disabilities include early identification. We know that the sooner we can identify students with emotional disabilities and provide interventions, the better the long-term outcome. In this day and age when school safety is a number one priority, it is sometimes difficult to provide adequate services for those individuals who exhibit violent or aggressive behaviors as a result of their emotional disability. This is a challenge for school systems to include these students or to provide them with the educational services they need within the public school system. Wraparound services are basically services that are coordinated together to support a child or student. For example, the medical field, social services, criminal justice system, school setting, and community mental health agencies may all work together so that they can more effectively support a student with emotional problems and help that student to be able to stay in their home in the community. In this day and age of accountability, we can no longer focus just on emotional and behavioral issues with students with emotional disabilities. We must make sure that we are providing the academic instruction they need so that they can progress in the curriculum as they should. This is very challenging, but it is essential for our students to have success. Continuum of alternative placements basically means offering different levels of placements for students with all kinds of disabilities. This can mean various placements such as full inclusion to resource, self-contained classrooms within the public education system, to residential placements or day treatment programs outside of the public education setting. It's very important that we offer our students a variety of placements so that we can meet their needs, but it's equally as important that we always select the least restrictive placement for our students. Transition is a focus for all individuals with disabilities right now in the state of Virginia. This is especially important for those individuals with emotional disabilities, as currently the outcomes are not always positive. Many of our students with emotional disabilities end up unemployed or even worse, incarcerated. It is very, very important that we focus on those long-term outcomes and doing the best we can to prepare our students to be productive citizens and to have quality of life after school. These next two slides outline some public laws that were passed that have greatly influenced special education, especially for those kids who display behavioral difficulties. It's important that you're familiar with both of these laws when you prepare for your exam. In 2010, the Virginia Department of Education organized a summit on better serving students with emotional disabilities. In the summit, several things were brought to focus regarding students with emotional disabilities. The most important thing to understand is that the summit showed that we are under-identifying and underserving this population. The closing remarks include several focuses, and a couple of which I think are worth mentioning. One is that this population appears to have the poorest school success rate. At the same time, this population also appears to have one of the poorest transition outcomes. One outcome of the summit is an emphasis on evidence-based practices to serve individuals with emotional disabilities. This will be something we'll be looking at later on in our course.